Hi, my name is Mohammed, and today we're going to be finding derivative for these five main equations. A bit of background knowledge. This is a graph when v initial isn't 0. So this is my v initial right there. It's not at 0 as you can see. We know that area equals delta d, which is displacement, it's not distance, and we know slope is going to equal to acceleration. If we look at the formula sheet, we know that acceleration equals v over t, delta v over t, and then we got that. And in this case, delta v is the rise and delta t is the run. Also, v average, we know it's going to be average of both initial and final. So we have to add them up. So it's going to be v final plus v initial divided by 2. That will give you average velocity. Okay, for equation 1, I'm just going to be using acceleration equals delta v over delta t. For my first step, I'm just going to expand delta v. We know delta v equals v2 minus v1. So v final minus v initial. So I'm just gonna put this in place of delta v. For my step 2, I'm just gonna take the t on this side. And for my last step, I'm just gonna take this negative v1 on the left side, and that's gonna make that positive. So at the end, I'm just gonna have v1 plus times t equals v2. So that's my first equation. You can write that as v2 equals v1 plus acceleration times delta t. For the second equation, I'm going to be using the area. To find the total area of this graph, I need to add the area of this rectangle and area of this triangle to get the total area. Meaning, delta d equals rectangle plus the triangle. To find the area of the rectangle, we know it's going to be base times height. And to find the area of the triangle, we know it's half of the rectangle, so it's going to be 1 over 2 base times height. For our case, the height is velocity, so h equals v, and our base is delta t, so our base is delta t. Now we can just sub this in place of b and h. So it's going to be, it's better to write the velocity first, because this is going to help us derive. The order of the multiple doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to put the v initial in the front. And for this, the height's going to be v2 minus v1. So you put that v2 minus v1, that. Then we can multiply these. As you can see, we have the same similar looking values, v1 delta t and v1 delta t. So we can just write them together. So when you subtract 1 v1 delta t minus half of that, you're left with half. So it's going to be half of v1 delta t plus half of v2 delta t. Now we can see that there's some similar variables, so we can just factor them out. Just gonna write v1 plus v2 first. As I already said before, order of the multiple doesn't really matter. Delta t. I can write this v1 plus v2 divided by 2 times delta t. And we know that v1 plus v2 divided by 2 is basically average, so we can also write this as v average times delta t. For my third equation, I'm going to use the area again. So for this time, I'm just going to take this. We know that v2 minus v1 equals delta v. So I'm just going to take that. So it's just going to basically, I'm saying that v2 minus v1 equals acceleration times delta t. I'm going to sub that in place of v2 minus v1. We have two t's. We can write them as t squared. So I'm just going to do that. There you go. That's my third equation. Equation 4. We're going to take number 1, rearrange that, and sub that into number 2. So this is the first, and we can just rearrange that for the t on one side and all the other variables on the other side. And our second equation, so I have delta 1 into 2. I have that v1 plus v2 over 2. So in place of t, just gonna add this. So it's gonna be v2. Now we have fractions, so we have to multiply the fractions. We can either do this FOIL like that, just like that, or we can rearrange and FOIL. You're gonna get the same answer, but this is gonna be a bit longer. So it's gonna take you a bit longer. So I'm just gonna rearrange. So it's gonna be v2 plus v1 times 2 minus v1. That's in the numerator, and in the denominator you just 2 times 8, so that's 2a. For my next step, I'm just gonna take 2a on this side. Do FOIL. That should give us v2 squared plus minus v1 squared 2a delta d. And as we did in the first equation, we have to rearrange that so the v2 is on one side and all the other variables are on the other side. So I'm just gonna take this v1 on the other side, and we can rewrite that as v2 equals v1 2 plus 2. Going back to equation 2, as you can see, this is 2 and this is gonna be our equation 5. Thanks for watching my video.